Now let's come to the second hurdle, why children can spell small words but cannot spell big words. So in other words, children can spell the word dog quite easily, but if you ask them to spell the word hippopotamus, that becomes very difficult, if not impossible for them. So let's understand why that is. You can see the child on the left can spell dog quite easily, horse not so easy, but then hippopotamus impossible. So if I ask you, just yourself, to take a moment, and what's the middle letter of the word cat? That's right, it's the letter A. Now what's the last letter of the word cat? That's right, it's the letter T. And what's the first letter of the word cat? That's right, it's a C. Now let's do the same thing for dog. What's the middle letter of the word for dog? Again, O, last letter, G, and the first letter, D. So how exactly did you do that? Well, let's get even more intricate. Let's spell the word dog forwards and backwards. So spell it forwards, and now spell dog backwards. That's right, it's D-O-G forwards and G-O-D backwards. And how were you able to do that? Well, how you were able to do that exactly was you made a picture of it. You made a picture of the word dog. What size was that picture? What colour were the letters? What colour was the background of the letters? And last, just point with your finger to the middle of the O of the word dog. So you've now made a discovery. What you've done is you've discovered your perceptual screen. The perceptual screen is where you actually put pictures of faces, pictures of buildings, pictures of words, etc. It's how we see, how our mind's eye sees on the perceptual screen. And good spellers have a big perceptual screen that big words can fit on. So let's look at the importance of it. Here we see a guy looking at a small picture, and he can get a certain amount of detail. But if he goes to the cinema, he sees a much bigger picture and he's much more detailed. So what's the importance of this? I want you now to make a picture of the front of your home. That's right. What colour is your front door? What colour are the walls? What colour are the window frames? And what colour is the roof? Now you can answer all those questions quite easy because you've made a picture of your home on your perceptual screen. So what I want you to do, I want you to point where the front door is on your picture. Now with your finger, run round the outside of the house so you can get an idea what size of a picture you're making. So obviously your perceptual screen was big enough to fit the picture of your house on your perceptual screen. But size matters. Why? Here we have a small picture of a house. And if I ask you what number is the house, difficult to say. I say there's a plant pot outside the front door. Is it on the left-hand side or the right-hand side? Hard to say because we're only looking at a small picture. But now let's make the picture bigger. And now we're starting to see a little bit more detail. But let's look at around the front door so we can get more detail. Aha! Now we can see on the right-hand side that the number is 18. And that plant that we hardly saw before is quite obvious that's on the right-hand side of the door. How can we do that? Because we've made a big picture instead of a small picture. So the importance is in the size and detail of the picture. So what exactly is this perceptual screen? Well, if we look here, you're looking at this video on a computer. Here we have the computer screen. And in front of the computer screen, you probably have a keyboard. And on the particular screen, there's 1,319,720 pixels. So, in other words, when we put a picture on the screen, we can get a certain amount of detail on it. And here we have a little picture been drawn on our screen, which we can see quite easily. But if we make the screen small, like on an Apple Watch, now what's happened to the detail of our picture? It's gone. We don't see half as much as we did when we see it on a big screen. So size matters, folks. The bigger the screen, the more we can fit onto our screen. And the more we can fit onto our screen, the greater the detail we can. And that's what we do in Dyslexia Bay. We make the screen not as big as the average, we make it bigger than average for children who already have a small screen. And in that way, they can see bigger and bigger pictures, bigger and bigger words. So if they've struggled with the word dog, we make the screen bigger so elephant fits onto it, and then we make it even bigger so they can do hippopotamus. So now you understand why a big perceptual screen is needed for big words, and all we have to do for a child who's struggling to get over the hurdle of spelling small words rather than big words, all we do is we make this perceptual screen bigger, and that's what we do in Dyslexia Bay to overcome the second hurdle. Now, let's look at another problem with the small perceptual screen. Here we have the word elephant, and if you ask the child to spell the word elephant, they can only do the first 3 letters. Or maybe they actually see the word elephant as 3 small pictures. And that means when they read that word, they've got to go to their brain and go to 3 different locations before they can read the word, and that's why they read much more slowly. It's not the only reason they read more slowly, and we'll see that when we come to the video on reading. But let's have a look at a problem here. Let's have a look at letter transposition. Here we have the first 2 pictures together, and we move one over the other like that, and then we move the third one over like that, and now when they spell the word elephant, they've left out letters. They've left out an E, and they've left out the H. Or, even worse, you can have jumbled up letters. Here you have one screen fitting over another one, the third screen sitting over the first one, and now they can only get the first few letters and the last few letters, and then jumble up the ones in the middle. So when you ask them to spell the word elephant, they'll go E-L, and then there's a long pause, and you help them out with the E-P-H, and then they go, oh yeah, and I know N-T is at the end. But now you understand why that happens. So, in remembering spellings, overcoming the first hurdle was to visualize spellings so they could remember them in the long-term memory. The second hurdle we've come over is to make the perceptual screen bigger so when they do visualize words, they can visualize big words, not just like elephant, but also words like hippopotamus. And that'll be in the long-term memory, and therefore they'll be able to remember great big words.